On the rundown for today's Philadelphia 76ers now, two stories that we want to hit. First, the New Orleans Pelicans don't want to give Brandon Ingram a contract extension. Does that open up an opportunity for Philadelphia to trade for the wing? And then also, Philadelphia could re-sign these three players who were on the team last year and are set to hit the NBA free agency market. All of that coming your way, but first, if you want to get featured on the show, drop your 76ers trade ideas in the comments. You have an opportunity to kind of be an executive producer here on 76ers. Now, let your voices be heard and prove to us that you know ball. Do that right now, and with that, let's talk some Sixers. Are the Pelicans out on Brandon Ingram? We start there for today's show. According to Guillory of The Athletic, the Pelicans unlikely to give BI a contract extension. Here's what he had to say in his report. After Ingram's ineffectiveness against one of the Western Conference's top teams, now and in the future, it took no time for questions to start popping up about his future with New Orleans. With Ingram entering the final year of his deal, those whispers turned into alarm sirens. Adding Pelicans Executive Vice President of Basketball Operations David Griffin saying, quote, "This is not going to be a summer of complacency for the Pelicans, and all eyes turn to Ingram. There's no question the Pelicans need to make some changes to the roster, and their best way to add a significant piece is to move Ingram in a trade this summer. Keeping him around will be complicated. Turns 27 in September, eligible for a 4-year, $208 million extension this summer. Considering their current and future financial situation, the Pelicans are unlikely to offer him that maximum deal this offseason, league sources tell The Athletic." So obviously, a lot to unpack there on the Ingram-Pelicans front. And if the Pelicans don't want to extend Ingram this offseason, and that report is indeed true, there's no doubt that I think he's going to get traded this offseason. They are hoping and praying in the Big Easy that Zion Williamson will be able to stay healthy. He was last year in the regular season. Played 70-plus games for the first time in his career. He was a dominant force. It's unfortunate that he got hurt in the play-in tournament game against the Los Angeles Lakers because he finally burst onto the scene in front of a national audience, and really for the first time since we saw him at Duke, he was playing in a big game. And this time at the NBA level, flying around, blocking shots, throwing down hammers, just using the physicality and the strength to get to the cup at will. Then he hurts his hamstring. But they've invested so much in Zion. He's such a unique offensive piece. It's a roster that is kind of expensive. The organization doesn't make a ton of money because not a lot of fans go to games. So Brandon Ingram could be on the outside looking in as far as their financial situation. Plus, they just might look for a more seamless fit next to Zion, and they've soured on BI because of how he struggled against some of the top teams in the West. Two interested teams that are really being talked about a lot, according to Ashish Mathur of HoopsHype. Philadelphia, for the purpose of this conversation, and then the Cleveland Cavaliers, who could also be making some changes with some good pieces existing on their roster as well in the East, Pelicans out in the West. The numbers for Ingram this past year, pretty good, but sometimes they were empty, and the three-point numbers have really gone down over the last couple of years. That's a little bit of a concern for me because it seems as though he's gotten a little gun-shy in shooting the ball from deep. You bring him into Philadelphia, he can't be gun-shy. And he's also been a little bit passive. That is not going to work in this city. But the numbers, not bad. 20.8 points per game, 5 rebounds, nearly 6 assists, 49% from the floor, and 35.5% from three-point range. You can make those numbers work. Daryl Morey looks at those numbers and says, there's a pretty good player in there. Would I do it? Let's turn on the TikTok, YouTube short camera, and let me share my thoughts over the next 60 seconds. For the Philadelphia 76ers this offseason, I don't think that Brandon Ingram is option number one, but if the Sixers lose out on the apple of their eye in Paul George, LeBron James. They can't swing a trade for Jimmy Butler, Kevin Durant. They might have to settle for a player like Brandon Ingram, who's going into the final year of his contract, and the Pelicans have soured on him. The risk in trading for Ingram, the three-point numbers over the last couple of years have gone down. He is a three-level scorer who can get a bucket from anywhere, but he's also gotten a little bit gun-shy in shooting the three-point shot. So if he's passive in New Orleans with a little bit of a passive personality to begin with, he didn't work out with the Lakers, is he going to be able to work out culturally in the pressure cooker that is Philadelphia, and as far as his role with the Sixers alongside Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid? The thing that I'm also worried about is if you have to give up draft capital for Brandon Ingram, a player who you're not sure about, and then have to give him a 4-year contract extension worth upwards of $200 million. What would you do? Let me know down in the comment section. Now I bring on producer Chip. You trade and extend Ingram. Does it make sense for the Sixers to not only give up the draft pieces, but also extend them? I kind of shared where I'm at. Where are you at, my brother?
Yeah, it's certainly a lot. And we know the Sixers don't have players to trade, so it's going to be these draft picks they had. The Clippers pick, some of their own picks. I'm sure the Pelicans would rather have players, but if they want to be able to retool and give themselves some flexibility, the picks could be enticing to them. Now, from the Sixers' perspective, let's just say LeBron goes back to the Lakers, Paul George goes back to the Clippers, Jimmy Butler stays in Miami. If Daryl Morey is really, set on getting what he considers to be a star-level player, I don't know if I consider Brandon Ingram a star-level player, but if he does, you got to pay him $50 million a year. And in my opinion, for the player we've seen Brandon Ingram be so far, I know he's still young and certainly still has the potential as he gets more playoff experience to become a better player. I just couldn't personally justify paying him $50 million a year, especially when I feel like if you get a player like Ingram, you probably need a few other complementary pieces, and you couldn't really do that to the level you'd need to if you are paying Ingram so much money. Again, he is younger, which is a little bit more desirable as opposed to getting a aging star veteran player. But for me, I'd rather go the route of either just signing somebody and then you have those draft picks to make another trade for someone else, or just splitting up this money into other complementary pieces that could surround Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey.
You heard from me. You heard from Chip. Now it's your opportunity to hop on board, join the show, and share what you think about the Sixers potentially pursuing Brandon Ingram. Would you trade for Ingram and then give him a max? T for trade and pay. N for no chance. I'm not going to go as far as to say no chance, but I'm going to type my N for no because I don't think it's a move that I'd explore. Now, if you fail out on all of the other moves that I mentioned a little bit earlier, a couple of minutes ago, then maybe Brandon Ingram is what you resort to. Coming up next here on the show, 3 players the Sixers reportedly want to bring back who played big roles for this team last year. Who are they? We'll talk about them coming up here in just a few moments. First, today's 76ers Now, sponsored by Prize Picks. Daily fantasy sports made easy. You pick 2 or more players. You choose more or less on their projected stats, and you can win up to 25 times your money. Not only is Prize Picks easy, it's guaranteed to make game day so much more fun. And with Prize Picks, you could turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. Our picks for Game 1 of the NBA Finals getting underway on Thursday night. Jason Tatum, the special now, more than a half point, easy money. Derek Lively, he just has to come through with 1 assist, more than a half dime. And then Daniel Gafford, more than 6 rebounds. He's been very active on the glass. There's always action on Prize Picks. This is the perfect time to try out something new as basketball is winding down. Make sure to try out esports this month, because for every Wednesday and Saturday in June, if your lineup does not win, you'll get your entry fee back. Choose from Counter-Strike 2, Call of Duty, League of Legends, and more. Per Keith Pompey, Philadelphia Inquirer, the Sixers interested in bringing back 3 free agents who were on this team last year. And according to Pompey, Philadelphia wants to resign and has shown interest in the early going of this offseason, and Kelly Oubre Jr., Kyle Lowry, and then Nicholas Batum. And all three players are players who Chip and I have talked about as us wanting them back because I think they'd be good depth pieces for Philadelphia. As long as Lowry wants to return, should be no problem in keeping him. This is a player who in the past has chased the bag, but at this point, clearly his NBA career is starting to come to a close. Why don't you stay in your home city of Philadelphia where you have a role, where you're respected, where you're appreciated, where you're going to get some run, and you could be a serious part of a championship contender. I also like the leadership that he brings, the toughness that he has. Kyle Lowry, for me, on a vet min deal, I'm doing it in a heartbeat. Can play on-ball, off-ball alongside Tyrese Maxey. Nicholas Batum, as we know, going to consider retirement. He's going to play with France this summer in the Olympics. He said that right after the year in an appreciative letter to Philadelphia. He thanked the fans for welcoming him and said he had a great year, fun year playing basketball. He's going to play for France in the Olympics. Could decide to retire. If he doesn't, Nicholas Batum is a player who I'd bring back. Solid defender. Maybe too rich to ask him to guard Jalen Brunson too often in a playoff series, but can at least do that from time to time. Won the game for Philadelphia against the Heat in the play-in tournament. He was incredibly clutch. He should also be inexpensive. And then Kelly Oubre Jr. could prove difficult to keep around. Not for the Sixers' lack of interest in Kelly Oubre, but because of the asking price and how high the Sixers are willing to go. Here's Pompey on Oubre. The Sixers realized Oubre played himself out of a minimum salary contract. ESPN noted he's a prime candidate to receive a mid-level exception for $8 million. A league source echoed that, saying Oubre should have to slide into a $6 to $8 million area if the Sixers are able to sign a third max player. So the Sixers willing to bring him back, the translation there, for about $6 to $8 million. I really think that Oubre, when you look at his skill set, what he can bring to the table, the fact that his stock is back up after it was down, which is why he signed that Vetman deal, he's going to be able to get $10+ million. This is still a young wing who's a good athlete, who showed a willingness to defend this past year under Nick Nurse. He's hot and cold in shooting the basketball, but he's a willing shooter. He could put the ball on the floor, and Philadelphia really counted on him many instances throughout this past year. So he's a piece that could really fit in nicely for another team that might have a little bit more cap space and could still give him a lot of burn. Here's what Oubre had to say about his free agency looming after the season. I just wanted to be loved for me. I don't know about the business side of it, but I can't tell you what I know because I represent myself right now. At the end of the day, I want to go somewhere where they respect and they love me. It's been nothing but love here, of course. Respect to Kelly Oubre, by the way, for representing himself. I think that's really cool. Sometimes I think athletes go overboard in paying agents. I know that in this business of television and sports media, I've had opportunities to sign with agents, and I'm like, I'm not giving you 10% of my salary. I'm going to be a big boy, negotiate these deals and these contracts myself so I can be self-made. Some other athletes have done that too, but I think that's cool. Chip, 76ers free agency decisions here. That's what we're talking about, the back half of the show. And some of these players who they could or could not retain. What are the chances the Sixers can bring back all of Lowry, Batum, Oubre, and could they still sign max players?
So I think it's a no-brainer to at least want to bring back all three of these guys, and I think all three of them would love to be back here in Philadelphia. As you said, Lowry, Batum should be vet min or at least close to vet min guys, but Oubre, man, the Sixers saying $6 to $8 mil for that mid-level exception, it's going to be tough because, if they are going the route of signing a max of a player, that's all they're going to be able to give him. Now, maybe some of his, counting stats and inefficiencies, only shot 31% from three, will draw down his value a little bit. But I'm hard-pressed to think that there's not a team out there that's willing to pay Oubre at least $10 million. It's the combination of his skill set, his improvement defensively, which was a big reason why he got a minimum contract and why he was not signed. Yeah, he was not a good defender prior to this year. Just didn't give effort. Always had the tools because he's super athletic, obviously, and long, but never really butt into that side of things. And he did this year and was very good on that end of the floor. So, look, a player I would love to bring back, and again, the Sixers would love to have back. He's a great fit in Philadelphia, too. His personality with the city, the fans love him. But if they go out and get a max player, now, if they don't sign a max player, you can give him a little bit more. But if they do go out and spend some money, I don't think they're going to be able to keep him for 6 to 8. I think he's going to end up elsewhere, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you said Oubre shot 31% from 3. I know he did. That's the statistical fact. But when you watch him play, you feel as though it's a little bit higher, and that's kind of the nature of how hot and cold he was, because it felt as though he was about 35, 36%. You'll take some of those misses when you can have him going in on a heater. I also like the growth that he showed in that playoff series against the Knicks. A little bit timid to start and then finish somewhat strong. So of these 3 players who the Sixers want to re-sign, who would you re-sign and make priority number 1? Kelly Oubre, Kyle Lowry, Nic Batum? Let us know down in the comment section right now. Certainly an interesting debate as you venture down there. Don't forget to hit that sub button if you haven't already done so. Year-round coverage of the Philadelphia 76ers, especially during this marquee offseason.